This is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello, Rebels, and welcome to episode 270 of the Rebel Author Podcast. Today, I'm talking to Z.S Diamanti, and, so we were supposed to be talking about reader magnets, and we do, but we also have an interesting chat about all kinds of things that Zach has been up to in order to sell more books, so I hope you enjoy that. To last week's comments, a couple of comments from Matt on the last couple of episodes. Wow, I think I heard your mind explode a couple of times. This was on David Vergert's episode, and Matt continues to say, I know mine did. So much information to take away and think about how to structure my author brand and business. I totally agree. I got to speak to David in Vegas and kind of followed up, blowing my mind there as well. So that was really interesting. And then on Celeste's episode, Matt says, this was really interesting, reframing readers as consumers. And of course we are, when we are all purchasing books. Good viewpoints, good thinking points. Thank you. So please do leave a comment. I love knowing what you thought about the episode and the little bits that you found interesting or any takeaways. So leave those comments. Instagram's probably best. And I would love to read them out next week. Okay, so in personal news and updates then. Back from Vegas. Vegas was a lot. It's always a lot. I'm always very grateful to Joanna Penn because she sends me a list every year of all the things that I need to take. And lo and behold, I have managed to come back from Vegas not sick both times. And lots of my friends who have gone have ended up coming home sick. So I literally eat fistfuls of vitamins whilst I'm there. I have a humidifier in my room. And I allow myself some time to just sit in my room on my own as well, because I have realised that I am getting worse and worse. The older I get, the more I struggle with in-person things when there is a large group of people. I'm okay on one-on-one, but when it's multiple one-on-ones with strangers or when it is large groups of people, I definitely struggle. And I feel like the more I work at home by myself, the more I am struggling. And it's not that I can't do it. It's just that I guess I have to go through an adjustment period. So yes, I loved Vegas. The other thing that I would say is, of course, it's no longer 20 books to 50K. It's now Author Nation. And I really feel like even though the structure of the conference was very similar, it was in the same place, in the same building. So there were definitely vibes that were the same. There was a huge, great big swathe of people who weren't there, who were there the year before. Definitely made it have a different vibe. I think there were some people that I thought were going to be there and weren't. But also that left room for new people. And there were certainly new authors who I hadn't necessarily met, 6 and 7 figure authors that were there that were fascinating to talk to. I think my big takeaway this year is probably twofold. The first one is that there are so many opportunities for us to have big business. There are so many different ways, so many different business models, so many opportunities for different business models that I feel like we should all be very excited. Before I went to Vegas, I made an intentional point of booking meetings in. Now, some of you might think, it's all right for you, you know everybody, but I didn't know any of the people that I booked meetings with the exception of Podium, because obviously I have licensed some of my audiobooks to them. But I'd never met Oriana from Kickstarter. I'd never met, another person I met with was Willow Winters. Although I'd sort of waved at David beforehand, I'd never really met David in person. So there were lots of people that I sat down with who I hadn't met, and I just reached out to them and I was like, look, can I buy you coffee? Can I buy you cocktails? Can I buy you dinner or whatever, in order to be able to pick these people's brains? And that is what I would say I spent the majority of the time doing. I asked them about their business models. I asked them about the lessons they'd learned. I, asked them what mistakes they'd made. I'd ask them what the best things they'd ever done were. I asked them what was the tipping point, what was the thing that they did that really accelerated their business. And I just listened to what they were saying, and I took notes, and in exchange I plied them with coffee, booze, cocktails, whatever, and it was extremely fruitful, and I really came away feeling very excited. And of course it's a two-way conversation, so I was giving info as well, but there were I don't know if this conference felt different to me, because I guess, of confirmation bias. I intentionally went with the purpose of having high-level business meetings, talking about how to move from 6 to 7 figures and looking at business structures and models. Perhaps I have gone to conferences before and focused on craft, or I focused on base level business. I'm not sure, but this conference felt different. And I'm going to go with, I think it was my confirmation bias, the fact that I had gone intending to get certain information. I got that information and therefore it felt like that was what the conference was. I'm not sure. Either way, I was very impressed and very satisfied by the time I came home, I have to say. But I do genuinely believe that there is some planning involved, and you do have to put your big girly panties on, or big boy panties, or big person panties on, and you do have to organise things in advance. I was back to back in Vegas. It was exhausting and relentless, but in the best way possible. The other thing that I came away with is that I'm not going to do ads. Towards the end of this year, I was really feeling like I needed to do advertising, paid advertising. I felt like if I wanted to take my business to the next level, that was what I was going to have to do. But that's not how I've got here. And why break it if it's not broken? I spoke to one particular author who runs a 7-figure business and does not run any ads. And that really gave me hope. They lean into what they're good at. And I think that's just what I need to do. I need to keep leaning into what I'm good at. So I have no intention of doing ads unless I absolutely have to. Would I do ads if I had to? Absolutely. I'm here to pivot if I need to. But for now, I am resolute on the fact that I'm not going to. The other thing that I realised is that whether I like it or not, I am in a physical product-based business. I, on a normal month, will see 30% of my income on paperbacks. Yes, sure, that is not more than half. However, on a month where I have a viral video, it could go over 50%. And none of that includes my Kickstarters, which if you count Kickstarters, it's going to be more than 50%. Now, I'm not ready to talk about what that means for me or what that looks like yet. I want to put some things into practice and then talk about it once I've done it. But it does mean that I'm looking at what I can do, how I can lean more into my kind of paperbacks and physical elements of my business. So that is going to be one of my goals for 2025, is to really lean into the physicality of my business, not just focusing on digital products only. The other realization that I came to is that I am going to have a year off next year. Now, I'm sure everyone's like, wait, what? I don't mean I'm not going to work. I mean, I'm not going to go to as many conferences. Next year, my priority is to get ahead of production. So it's going to be a quiet year for conferences. This year, I have done 7 in-person conferences, 8 if you include the reader event I did. That's too many. I'm exhausted. I am going to prioritise, and I think I might do an end of year wrap up. I really like it when I listen to, there's a couple of other authors who do sort of end of year review and then goals. And I really like when I listen to them. So I might start doing that this year. I really, really want to be 6 months ahead of production by the end of next year and a year ahead by the end of 2026. So that is my goal. I'm going to go to less events. I'm going to go to London Book Fair for the day, and then there's one particular conference that I want to go to that hasn't been announced yet. If it's announced, I will be trying my hardest to make it there. It is a US one, and then if that doesn't happen, then maybe I'll go back to Vegas. I'm not sure yet. But if that other one happens, then I won't be going to Vegas. So it will only really be one conference. Now, I already feel the FOMO of that, but I think it's important. I think I need a year to really consolidate. I need a year to be working on the business, and I need a year to be pushing the growth. I've now got an extremely lofty goal for by the time I'm 40. No, I'm not ready to confess it yet. I will when I think it's possible. Hashtag competition. But I am very, very excited for the future, and I definitely feel like Vegas gave me that. So yeah, that's my little summary from Vegas. I will be working on finishing up some admin tasks today. I've got to... I'm also organising my kiddo's birthday, but I have to finish up some last minute boring tax stuff and things like that. And then I'm going to be moving on to my next project and allowing myself to have more time to outline. I'm going to be extremely intentional this time with my tropes, my hooks, and creating TikTokable scenes. I'm literally starting with that. I am starting with those scenes, and then I'm going to build the story around it as an experiment to see what happens. So yeah, you can follow along with that if you would like. But I'm very, very excited to do that because I feel like it's going to mean that I know where my kind of best-selling scenes are before I even finish the book, and then I'll know how to market it. So I'm quite excited for that. I gave a couple of sessions. I was on a panel about TikTok, and I was on the LGBT panel, and I did a class on tropes, like using tropes in your marketing. You don't have access to it unless you purchase the digital one, but if you did, then I'm really proud of that class. I think it was a good class. So yeah, go and have a look at that. My book, the final book in the vampire series, House of Crimson Curses, is about to release. We're a couple of weeks out now. I am super close to breaking the pre-order goal from book 2, so I'm really, really hoping that we do that. And we are hitting print on all of the Shopify website stuff. So those will hopefully be arriving next week. And then we are about to hit print on the Kickstarter books as well. So it looks like I will spend a day, if not the last week before Christmas, then it will be the first week of January where I will go and sign and pack all of the goodies and stuff as well. So that's really exciting. I always like the fulfillment stage. There is something very satisfying for me about packing those boxes. I know it sounds so antithetical to like wanting to run a strategic business and stuff, but there's something about getting your hands dirty and making those pretty boxes that I abso-fucking-lutely love. It really does bring me so much joy, and I literally pack each one with love. So like I hope people feel the love when they arrive. So anyway, that is kind of me until Christmas. Hopefully I will have a full comprehensive outline by Christmas. I potentially will write a novella as well in that time. One thing that I've learned about Kickstarter is I really don't like doing stuff after the campaign is over. My competition feels like we're done when the campaign finishes. So I need to write, if I'm going to write bonus stuff, I need to write it before the campaign. So I have a novella idea that I'm trying to do, but I can't quite get excited about it. So I wrote a few paragraphs and then was like, so I need to really look at that and decide whether or not I'm going to attempt it. And if I am, I just need to get on with it and just make myself do it. So yes, I think what I probably need to do is figure out something really hooky inside it, and then that will make me excited, and then I'll fall in love with it, and then I'll be able to write it. All right, I think I've been harping on for quite enough time. The Rebel of the Week this week is Kiersten. Kiersten says, when I was in elementary school, we had a programme called Accelerated Reader. I believe it was intended to encourage reading, which is a noble goal, except there were some flaws in the design. We had to do an assessment at the beginning of school to determine our reading level range, which would dictate the books we were allowed to read for the programme, as well as a point goal we were supposed to reach each semester. Each book was worth a certain number of points based on its reading level. So books rated at a lower difficulty level were worth fewer points, and more difficult ones were worth more points. After finishing reading, we had to take a comprehension test. If we passed the test, we received a percentage of the book's overall point worth. Get all the questions right on a 10-point book, and then you get 10 points. Get 90% right, and you get 9 points, and so on. This programme weighed into our English grade. The problem for me was that I was an advanced reader. As an 11-year-old, I tested into the high school reading range between 14 and 18. And my school library didn't have many books in my reading level that I could use for the programme. And my point goal for the semester was very high. What's a bookworm to do? I got a bit creative. Luckily, this was during the time when the Wizard books, that shall not be named, were being published. I had read the first few already, and they were worth a lot of points. So I started the semester by taking a comprehension test for the Wizard books in order to score enough points to meet my assigned goal. Then I spent the rest of the semester reading whatever the fuck I wanted. Picture books, chapter books... and treasures I found at my county public library, such as my favourite adult serial killer suspense books by Mary Higgins Clark, Loves Music, Loves to Dance, which I proudly displayed on my desk during free reading time. I guess I did follow the rules. I got all my points, and those Mary Higgins Clark books were technically in my reading range, but shy me a little, still got a kick out of outsmarting the system. I fucking love that. That is such a cute little rebellion. Okay, if you would like to be a Rebel of the Week, please do send in your story, and we really, really, really need them. So please send them in. You can email your story to Becca over on rebelauthorpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, one new patron this week, Anthony Paparello. Thank you very, very much for joining me. This week, as I record, well, actually tomorrow, we're going to be having our Poison and Prose session. And you can join our Slack group, and we have our masterclass on how to write funny in December. If you would like to support the show and get early access to all of the episodes, as well as bonus content, you can from as little as $2 a month by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. This week's episode is sponsored by Fictionary. Fictionary is incredible software, and don't forget that as a listener, you're entitled to 25% off Storyteller Premium and certification by using the code, all caps, Rebel25. That's Rebel25. Rather than me tell you, as Fictionary's first ever certified story coach, all about why I love them, I'm going to let Amy, my own editor, tell you all about why she loves Fictionary.
Hello, I'm Amy Sund, editor at Red Leaf Word Services. Now that your first draft is done, it's time to focus on the big picture elements of your story. Here's where Fictionary can help. Fictionary can track over 30 structural elements per scene. You heard that right. Per scene. It presents these elements in graphs, charts, and color-coded diagrams. It's a fantastic way to pick out weak spots or holes in your story's structure, especially for visual learners. Fictionary is one of the tools I most often suggest to my manuscript evaluation clients. I've used it in my own writing for refining scenes, smoothing out transitions, and seeing where I need to focus my attention. A 14-day free trial is available for new users, perfect for plugging in a short story to see what comes up. Founder Christina Stanley has built a thriving community around the software that is supportive, social, and educational. Come join us and see how Fictionary can help you craft a novel your readers will love.
Hello and welcome to the Rebel Author Podcast. Today I'm joined by Z.S Diamanti. Zach, as I'm going to call him, is the award-winning author of the Stone and Sky series, an epic fantasy adventure, and Guard in the Garden, the first book in the Fables of Finlestia, a cozy fantasy series. He went to college forever ago and has far too many pieces of paper on his wall. He is a USAF veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom and worked in ministry for over 10 years before pursuing creative endeavors full-time. He and his wife live in Colorado with their 4 children, where they enjoy hikes, camping, and tabletop games. Hello and welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You are most welcome. So before we dive in, what is Operation Enduring Freedom?
Okay, yeah. So Operation Enduring Freedom was the campaign in Afghanistan from 2001 all the way until, it just wrapped up, 2 years ago? So one of the longest campaigns in American history as far as overseas war. So, so I'm a veteran of Afghanistan during my time in the military. While I was in the Air Force, yeah.
Okay, amazing. And like, what regiment were you in? Did you fly planes? Were you on the ground? Were you infantry?
Yeah.
How? Like,
I wish I was flying planes, but no, I wasn't that cool. I was I was medical, so I got to work at the hospitals and work with the Army and stuff like that. So
amazing. And what did you do in ministry?
Yeah, so while I was in ministry, I was in pastoral ministry for about 10 years.
Wow.
And so I got to work in youth ministry, getting to work with teenagers and getting to work with young adults and young families and all sorts of stuff. So it was pretty great. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, I always like to ask about the interesting things in a bio, but when we start these episodes, I always like to hear, like, where did you come from? Like, how did you get here? What's your story?
Yeah, I got kind of a crazy story because my dad was in the military when I was growing up, and then I joined the military, and so I didn't really have a home. So like there was no real like I didn't have a home to come from. You could just say America, I guess, because that was it, right? And so we moved around all the time. Then I joined the military, and I moved around all the time. Now I've landed in Colorado, and it's funny because when I was young, I didn't know I needed glasses, but I really needed glasses. And so I always thought I was dumb, like growing up, like I couldn't read and I thought my brain couldn't work the page and couldn't go down the lines. Eventually, I joined the military and they're like, dude, you need glasses. Duh. All of a sudden I could read. It was amazing. I started reading everything I could. This is age 22, by the way. And all of a sudden I was trying to catch up for decades of not reading because I didn't know I needed glasses. And eventually, cramming all these books in the span of, what, it's been 14 years now that I've been able to read. That I fell in love with stories. I always loved stories. My brother and I used to tell stories to each other in our bunks, at night when we were supposed to be asleep, but always loved stories. But eventually, it was like, hey, this is really awesome and I love this. I want to tell some stories. And, after Afghanistan, I needed to kind of change my space, the way processed things creatively, because I was a musician and a drawer and a colorist before. And so after Afghanistan, I needed something a little different. And I started dabbling in stories and started dabbling in horror stories and, nonfiction essays and all sorts of fun things, literary fiction, all sorts of short pieces that I started selling. And all of a sudden I was like, man, maybe I could do this.
So I don't even know
I
where to.
know there's so much.
The
I love it.
eyesight thing is wild to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So how bad is your prescription?
It's bad enough that when I try to read a page, what'll happen is it's a stigmatism where if I try to read a page, the I can't get to the next line. So my eyes will read the same line over and over and over, and like three, four times in, I'm like, I can't, and I have to move to the next line. It is painful, painful trying to read without glasses.
So are you long or short-sighted?
So I'm actually a little bit of both, apparently.
Okay, okay.
So technically, apparently, I need bifocals, but they're like, you're not an old man yet, so we'll just like let you have this.
Yeah. Ah, okay. That's fascinating to me.
Super
I've worn,
goofy.
no, I mean, I've worn glasses since I think I was 11.
Yeah.
So I feel your pain. And I'm now at the point where like it's very much not legal for me to drive without glasses. And
Oh no.
yeah. And like we're at the point where so we came back from holiday, and I said to my wife, I was like, "Oh God, I really feel like my vision's not quite as sharp as it was." And she's always like, "You're always saying that," and I was like, I feel like it's quite bad at the moment. Anyway, went to the opticians and they were like, "Wow, you need new
Wow.
glasses."
Yeah,
Yeah, they were like,
we need
"Wow,
a
it's
change.
bad." Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but so much so that like I'm finally at the stage where the lens could be thinned. Like it's we're at that point now, and I was like, "Oh
Nice.
damn." Anyway, we're going to talk
Uh,
about reader magnets and maybe a little bit of TikTok because I'm also a TikToker.
yeah.
So let's
Yeah, I
let's
hear you and I get to be on a panel together soon.
ah
Yeah, I think
oh
we're going to
do
be in
we?
Author Nation together. That's going to be
Oh,
fun.
this is exciting. Oh, is this the TikTok panel?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh,
How
that's so
fun.
cool. So I'm on a couple of panels, so I'm like, wait a minute, which one is it?
I know.
That's very exciting. Okay, well, let's start with a reader magnet, and then we'll
Yeah,
dive
let's do
into
it.
some TikTokery. I think most people know what a reader magnet is, but in case there's any
Yeah.
new listeners and kind of new writers listening, what is a reader magnet, and why is it so important for indie authors especially?
Yeah, so kind of the way I define a reader magnet is that a reader magnet is something of value that offered by an author in exchange for the permission and ability to contact the reader further. Okay, so something of value that author exchanges to the reader the permission to them more. This is something that's an incentive. It convinces readers to join you. It's a transaction. It can be revoked by either party because, like, hey, if people don't want your freebies anymore and they don't want to listen to your emails anymore, they can unsubscribe, right? But it's also a filter, which I think is probably the most important piece for indie authors, because what it does is when a reader magnet hits a reader's hands and they get a sense and a vibe of who and what you are and what you're writing and what you're producing, one of two things happens. Either they love it and they want to buy everything that you put out, which is great because that's what you, as the author, you're like, yay, that's what I want. I want readers who love my stuff. Or they hate it and they ditch you before they get to your book, which sounds like a bad thing. But the really good part about that is it's better for you to lose them at the freebie than for them to go spend money on your book, read it, hate it, and then leave you a 1-star review. It's way better to lose them before that part. And so a reader magnet is vital for indie authors because it gives you the ability to continue to reach out and communicate with readers in a very personal way. And the crazy part about it is that reader magnets, because they get them into your email system, because you can email them directly, you're going to see way better click-through rates than you do on anything else. And it's social media, whatever. I think the average click-through rate on social media is like less than 1% or something crazy. Don't quote me on that. I think that's the last thing I read about it was less than 1%, which is stupid. That's really bad. But most email marketing averages about 17%, which is like insane. And if you're doing good emails, you'll do better than that. I think mine's like 24% or something like that. So
Click-through or open rate?
Open rate is what is so when you get people to go through into your email, you'll actually get a click-through rate of probably 7-8% if you got a good hook on them. But you'll get an open rate of about 24%. Whereas social media, just like TikTok, it goes out to not your followers, like 90% not your followers. And you'll be lucky if you get some people to actually follow or click or anything, follow through on any sort of thing.
Are you using Instagram as well? Because I'm using the two platforms concurrently for two very different reasons. So for me,
Yes.
TikTok is pure marketing. I literally
Correct.
don't try and build a community there at all.
Yeah.
But on Instagram, I repurpose all the content and like everybody, your followers get to see your stuff first. And if they engage, then it gets sent out to new
Yeah.
people. So that's kind of where like I'm then able to build more of a community, I suppose, for want of a better word. But do you do the
Totally.
same?
Yeah, I have the same thing going. Yeah, I'll post the same videos that I post on TikTok to Instagram as well, and it's a different engagement type.
Yeah.
With TikTok, it does go out to new users, and so the whole idea is that your TikTok is kind of your net. You're casting the net to gather as many people as you can, and through those minute, discussions that you have in the comments with them, you're trying to lead people to your reader magnet so that you can connect with them further because frankly, it's going to be hard to get them every time on TikTok for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, it's like a gift and a curse, really, because TikTok, whilst you can't really build a community there, and there are people that do, AK Mulford, they're brilliant at building a community on TikTok. I don't know how they do it, but anyway, TikTok converts to sales so much more than Instagram. And I think the reason for that is that it is new people. So you're getting, it's like, it's essentially Facebook advertising before it costs money. Whereas Instagram is showing to your followers who have already likely brought stuff from you. So it's only, I find Instagram only really converts when you're posting about something new. Agreed, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I'm finding, but obviously everybody's mileage varies.
Okay, so for sure.
you have a TikTok video, speaking of, where you talk about the fact it was a little bit over a year ago that you quit your day job. So, how have reader magnets played a role in that? Why have they helped you? How have they helped you? Have they helped you? Yeah, talk about that.
Sure, yeah. I'm one of those crazies that kind of goes all in when when I do something. And so I actually quit my job a year before my first book came out, which is insane. I know. Um, Most people look at me like, dude, what were you thinking? Well, okay, we did a lot of family math and we made sure that, okay, as long as I continue to do like, side jobs in graphic design and other things, and my wife had her job and everything else, we were like, okay, as long as we continue, we can make it to that year mark, hopefully. Now, let's be real. The math got really tight, like really tight right before the book launched. But I was working that whole time, that whole year. I was building things. I was building a social media presence. I was building my readers list, which was part of it. The three things that I really used as foundational things to build my author like career to start it off was my website, my social media presence, and my like my readers list, which in order to create a readers list and grow a readers list, I had to have a reader magnet to actually entice people to get in there. So the reader magnet was vital. And for me, it was really cool because my reader magnet is actually 7 stories. So I write these epic fantasy adventures, right? And so I created 7 stories of 7 different characters that you meet in the series. And and I gave those out as, free breadcrumbs. And people were like, oh, cool, I'll come check these out. And some people loved them. Some people hated, they just weren't their vibe and they jetted, and that was okay. But by the time my first book came out, turns out my 7 stories were just long enough that I could create like a little novella sized book of a collection of the stories, and I could release that at the same time as my book. So not only was I selling the first book, Stone and Sky, but I was also selling the collection of the Preludes collection at the same time. So when I launched, I was actually selling 2 books at once, which helped because it brought the margin up for every sale, right? Because usually more more often than not, people would just buy Stone and Sky, but sometimes they were buying both. And that was awesome, especially starting out. And the reader magnet, people loved. And then they ended up going, hey, you put it in print too. And they wanted it afterwards, anyways.
I've done
So it was a
exactly the same thing.
win-win-win, right?
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my little purple one here, in fact, this blue one next to it, they're both reader magnets for 2 different
Yeah.
series. And I've done the same thing. I'd never intended to put them in print. And then people asked, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I can do that. I
I
didn't think
suppose,
about it, but
right?
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't want to pay me for it, sure, I'm gonna do it.
I mean, I gave it to you for free, but if you
Yeah,
want to pay
exactly.
me for it,
I know
happy
that's what I
day.
mean. I was like, this is a gift. I've given it to you for free, but they wanted to pay for a physical one. So I was like, sure, I can do that. Um,
So
uh,
cool.
so how long ago did you publish your first book? How long have you been writing? Yeah, to just clarify the timeline for me.
Yeah, sure, sure. So the timeline is this. I in September, so August, like the end of August, beginning of September of 2022. So not last year, but the year before, I quit my job. And for about a year, because Stone and Sky actually came out August 29th of this past year. So August 29th of 2023. So it's been out for a year now. So a year and like a couple of weeks. And I published it then. I published Stone and Tide and Stone and Ruin. Like that is Stone and Tide came out in February. Stone and Ruin came out in May. So I published 4 books in the span of like 9 months. Of course, that was because of a lot of advice that I'd heard about, quick release, especially as you're getting started. And it makes sense. And I totally understand why people do it. Admittedly, I've slowed down my pace a little bit because I'm like, it is not sustainable to do that. To start out, sure, that's a good way to start out because then you have multiple books that people can buy through and read through, right? So you've got more out there to provide to people. But it's tough, man. I'm telling you, like here I am a year out from the release of Stone and Sky, and I'm like, man, that was hard. People look at you and go, you're a lunatic. And you're like, yeah, a little bit. You got to be a little crazy to do something like that. But the fact of the matter is that because I had a reader magnet and also the collection afterwards, I was able to start with hundreds and hundreds of people on my readers list. So when Stone and Sky went out, I sold my first 1,000 within a few weeks, of the launch of the first book. And a lot of my first goal was don't be that guy that only sells 3. I was like, don't be that guy that hit the publish button and was like, okay, there it goes. Oh, nobody bought it. I only sold 3 and my mom didn't even buy one. And like, like my mom did buy one eventually. She wasn't one of the first 3 or even one of the first few hundred, but she did. She did buy some.
I don't let my mum buy mine. I write lesbian smut. I'm not going to let her read that.
Okay, well, I mean, a little different genres, but
yeah, a little bit.
mine are kind of these clean, old school epic fantasies, right? So like
that would be very wholesome. I'd let her read that.
Yeah, right. She probably love it.
Unfortunately, there's too many tits and fannies in mine for her to go anywhere near it.
Okay, so, I mean, there you go. But you sold more than 3. You get it. You get it. Your initial goal is just not 3, more than 3, right?
Yeah.
And then you make goals from there, right?
Yeah.
But that's the amazing thing is building a readers list even before you have your book out.
Yeah.
Can totally change the way that you launch.
Okay, well, like we are going to talk more about reader magnets, but I would love to talk about TikTok because it is responsible for blowing up my career and literally changing the face of my business. And so I'm deeply passionate about it and will try and convert anybody who will listen into doing TikTok. Yeah, but it does take a certain type of person to do TikTok because it is fucking relentless, like relentless and exhausting. But it brings in the dollar. So talk to me about TikTok. Talk to me, I guess, about your strategy because you do things very differently to me. You do a lot of talking to camera and I love it when people can get the talking to camera to work. So yeah, like first of all, I want to ask about kind of your TikTok strategy and then I want to ask about like your website. Is it Shopify? Are you doing Shopify?
Yeah, so I actually have a combination of Shopify and who do I use? It used to be called Zyro. Now they're owned by Hostinger. So I kind of have a combo. But yes, Shopify is what I use for my store.
And you have TikTok Shop, right?
And I have TikTok Shop. Yeah. Okay,
cool. So let's start with TikTok. And then let's go into the more direct sales and sort of like, I would love to know, like, you don't have to give me any numbers, but kind of like, do you have a sense of like a proportion of how much of your income comes from like Amazon versus Shopify? Because Shopify is my second biggest. Amazon inevitably is the biggest, but Shopify, it is probably maybe Kickstarter now is the second biggest. I don't know. Anyway.
Kickstarter too. I like that one too.
Oh my God. I've got one running now and it literally went mental yesterday. It was insane. I couldn't believe it. But anyway, talk to me about TikTok.
Yeah. So TikTok is so good at sending your videos out to new people, right? I would say on average, I think the average is going down a little bit as they've been changing with the shop things that they're trying to push and some of the other things they're trying to push. I think the average has been changing a little bit, but the average used to be that it was 90% new people seeing your video. I think it's gone down a little bit. I've been seeing kind of in the 70s and then the 80s, but 90 isn't exactly the percentage that I'm seeing anymore as far as this video has seen 90% new people. But still 70 to 85% is still insane compared to most other social medias, right? And the amazing thing about TikTok is it'll send it out to new people and that's how people discover you. I had somebody telling me Actually, no, I'll save that for later. I'll save that for later because I know another question you're going to ask me later. So I got to keep that one. But it's so vitally important because that's where new people will find you. And the thing is you don't have to show your face, right? I showed my face because I'm doing fun fantasy. And it was like, I can bring the fun and the joy and the exuberance in the videos. And I was like, it makes sense. That's gonna make sense with the people who are gonna want to read the books that I'm writing. So let's go with that. You don't have to show your face. A lot of authors don't, and a lot of authors have crazy big accounts. Why? Because they put text over book flips, they put text over a cover, they put text over all sorts of things because they're getting people to stay on that video for more than 3 seconds. It's that happy 3 seconds. As long as you can get past that 3 seconds, TikTok's gonna like you because you've captured their attention for at least 3 seconds. Because the whole thing TikTok really wanted before was they wanted people spending time on the app, right? Mm-hmm. Some of that is shifting a little bit because now they just want people to spend money on the app. And so there is a little bit of a dynamic shift happening. I don't know if you've noticed it for yourself. You guys, you're in the UK, right? So the TikTok shop kind of recently opened for you guys, didn't it? So I, on the American side, I've seen kind of a shift going over the last several months. But the general strategy that I have is just talking about books like my books.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I was having a look at your videos and stuff and trying to work out like why they work so well. And I think the difference between us is that you have the most engagingly positive face, like you smile and your eyes smile, whereas I am like a raging angry lesbian, and that definitely attracts other angry lesbians, right? So like I feel like because TikTok's so good at showing your content to people who actually want it.
So good at it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, I think I'm just being shown to other very angry women.
Oh my gosh. You're probably not wrong though. Like that's
right?
kind of how it works though. Because I mean, generally speaking, my TikTok audience is so very positive and so fun. Of course, you're gonna get trolls. Like the trolls leak their way into everything, right? So like you're not gonna get away from trolls in general. But in general, most of my like audience is like super positive and fun and like happy and like want to engage with happiness and joy, which is so cool.
Have you heard of Becca Syme?
Becca Syme. I'm trying to remember.
She does the Better Faster Academy and the Clifton Strengths stuff. Do you know it?
I don't know it.
Ah, man, I am dying to know what your Clifton strengths are. I bet you are really high positivity because like it literally like screams off you. Anyway, that is a whole other conversation. I would love to know about your TikTok shop and your kind of direct strategy because you have such attention to detail. Like even like I watched a couple of your like when you wrap up boxes and stuff like you really do put a lot of time and effort into it. So I suppose I have a couple of questions. Like one is like, I guess, what is your strategy there? Two, do you have any like cool tips and tactics for listeners who might want to, you know, put that kind of extra attention and detail into theirs? And three, how much time is it taking?
All right. All great questions. Okay, let's see if I can tackle them all. So, yes, I do really cool autograph boxes. One of the things that we were looking at when I was I was starting out last August, it was like, okay, I've got to come out with a bang because we were scraping the bottom of the barrel financially, right? As a family, it was like I gotta do this. Like this has got to be done right. And so I even reached out to some other authors who did, you know, autograph boxes and things like that. Just kind of got ideas and talked to different people about, you know, what was working for them, what maybe they were like, I don't know if that's really worth it or whatever, right? I love to surprise people. I love to surprise people with generosity. That's it's this thing that's in me that I just love to do, and I love to be generous with people. So some authors will be like, "Oh, everything you put in there is going to cut out your margins, blah blah blah." I get it. As somebody who's been running this business for over a year, I get it. But but I also love the fact that when people open these boxes and they open my signed copy of Stone and Sky, and there's a wax sealed envelope in there with a note that has their name on it and everything, and they got stickers and they got a certificate of authenticity, and there's recipes from the book in there that they get to make, and there's all sorts of fun stuff. I love that they get excited enough to share it. So not only am I getting to see their faces when they're so excited about these boxes, but they're sharing it, and other people are like, "Wow, that's really cool. I want one of those boxes," and they'll go and get one too. So that it strategically, it was like, I want to be so generous that people are like losing their minds, because I love that. But then also they're going to lose their minds and they're going to share it with everybody else, which is just a compounding effect, right? So the book boxes were a huge, huge strategy for us. Spent a lot of time trying to figure out what would make sense for the book boxes and really putting together really nice ones. And because of that, all the shares happen, more people buy them from the TikTok shop. TikTok shop sort of explodes. I think we've sold 1,400 books on the TikTok shop in a year, which is pretty exciting. Several other authors that I've, coached and helped them get their TikTok shops running. I know some of them who have sold, they're going on 3,000 right now, books that they've sold in the last, several months or whatever. And I'm like, awesome. It's great. It's an amazing thing because people really love opening those boxes and they love to share that kind of experience with other people. And then if they're happy going into the book, hopefully they're a little nicer to you in their reviews, right? So, I mean, let's try to make people happy going into it. So that was a lot of strategy. I was a little bit nervous going into it because I was releasing this book. I was going all in, and only a handful of people had read it. I didn't have an ARC team starting out. I didn't have any of that. And so I was super nervous, and I was like, another thing is these boxes will kind of cover me a little bit. Like, hey, look how pretty the boxes are. Eventually, a lot of people have read it now and actually really enjoy it because, well, they love that old school kind of fantasy vibe. And that's amazing. I wasn't expecting that. And so part of it was trying to cover myself. Look, a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings went into that stuff, but it turned out to be one of the best things I could have done. And it costs money to put a map in there. It costs money to get yourself a custom wax seal. It costs money to buy stickers and get them printed. It costs money to print bookmarks. It costs money to do a box, but it's worth it.
Okay, so I tried to math quickly in my head. So you said you've done 1,400 copies in a year of the book boxes, which is about 100-ish a month, which is about 3 a day. Is that right? Must be make 3 to 4 a day.
Yeah, that's a good average.
Yeah.
Out of what it all is, but I'll say that it's feast or famine when it comes to TikTok shops.
So that's
sometimes.
So the reason that I'm asking is that my Shopify is doing very well.
Right.
So I don't have TikTok shop at the moment purely because it will only sell to the UK. So I know if I switch my account, it's going to turn all the traffic to UK, whereas at the moment all my traffic is America, and I don't really want to do that. So I think I'm going to have to set up a second account in order to do TikTok shop. But
yes,
my
and
Shopify,
you and I can talk about that because that's the way to do it.
Yeah, well, but the problem is my Shopify sells a fuck load of books, and it terrifies me the amount of time it would take me to manage all of that if I were to do the shipping and stuff. But it's even things like I've got people wanting art packs or book plates, and I can barely keep up as it is. my
Yeah.
Shopify earns a full-time salary, like a full-time salary just to
Yeah.
Shopify. So
Right.
it's terrifying. But also, if the demand is there, I don't want to restrict that demand. And there is also the book nerd worm inside me who fucking loves a pretty book box. I want a
Right.
book box. I
Of
want to make the
course.
book boxes for
I
readers. I
know.
fucking love
It's so
it, you know?
fun.
It's
Yeah,
so
I get it.
fun.
It's
But
so
also,
fun.
I've got to write books, you know?
Right.
So like how
So
much time does it really take?
yeah, so it's really feast or famine on TikTok, okay? Because on TikTok shops, sometimes you get a video, you know how it is. Sometimes a video like goes crazy and you're like, awesome. I don't know why that one worked. And you try to reproduce it and it does nothing, right?
Yeah,
But happens all the time.
yeah, all the time.
But sometimes you have videos that just do whatever. They don't do much, right? So it's very much like that. You get a video that goes crazy, all of a sudden you're sold out. And you're like, well, I guess I got to pack boxes for the next 2 days, right? Like, I get it. When it goes crazy, it takes several hours, and you get better at it. Like as you figure out the process. Like, we were doing candles with wax in a spoon, and then like pouring it on there and using the wax seal. Eventually, we learned, oh, you can get a glue gun, like a hot glue gun with wax sticks, and you can produce so much faster, right? You learn all these little tricks that just make the process so much faster. Now, in fairness, I also have an assembly line of humans at my house with 4 children and my amazing wife. If we get slammed with orders, our kitchen table just becomes like a warehouse, and we just kind of go through the assembly line, and everybody does one thing or the other. But most days it's a couple boxes, no big deal. Pack them up when I get the chance. And, you kind of get a rhythm. The post office ladies know me. They
Is
know
there
me very well. And you go every day.
do you think there's ever a time that you'd outsource it?
We've certainly considered it on the really crazy weeks. So
Yeah.
like if you have a really big video and it goes really crazy and you sell all your inventory, you're like, oh man. Like sometimes you feel like, I wonder if we could outsource this to somebody. But then you also have the weeks where you get like only a few and you're like,
Mm,
I only got 5 and I probably should have posted more this week, right?
mm.
And it's like,
Okay.
feast or
Yeah.
famine, right?
Yeah. Okay. I definitely can tell like my sales graph on KDP almost identically matches the views on TikTok. It's really disconcerting to be honest with you, because I
I
don't
know.
really like being reliant on one thing. That's one of the reasons I do
Agreed.
Kickstarters also. Well, actually
Yep.
it's not. It's because I want the pretty book boxes and I want to be able to give them to the
I
queer
know.
community. But aside from that, also it does then back up, in case TikTok were ever to go down, there's another
Yeah.
method for
Yeah.
bringing in, some good earning money. Um,
Yeah. I hear it.
okay.
I do all 3 as well.
Oh, do you? I love it. I
Yep.
love it. Oh man, we should have
Yep.
talked about Kickstarter too. Okay. Okay, so one last question before I go back to reader magnets. I'm so good at sticking to the questions. It's
Yeah, we're
unbelievable.
doing so great.
It's just so many interesting things to talk about,
Agreed.
right?
Yeah, we're gonna have
Um,
fun in Vegas. We're gonna talk a lot.
exactly. Okay, so you have been full time for about 18 months, right?
Yeah. Yep. It was August when Stone and Sky came out. That's when the switch kind of happened, where it was like, oh no, I can't not. I can't.
So
I
about a
had to
year then.
stop. Yeah, I had to stop like doing all of my graphic design side work.
Okay.
It was like I can't
So my
handle all of
question
it.
to you then is so I remember, so I've been full time for 5 years now. But I would say I was still doing a lot of freelance until probably the
Yeah.
middle of last year.
Yeah.
Um, and then when TikTok blew, I was like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore.
Right.
You have to
Yeah.
focus. Um, and I have changed a lot in that time. So what
Yeah.
are like your biggest changes, or what were the biggest lessons that you've learned in that first year? Because I remember that first year just trying to survive. I didn't care about anything.
Oh,
I didn't care about how many books I sold. I didn't care about where I got my money from. I just needed to survive so I didn't have to go back to the
survive.
day job.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of survival, and a lot of testing and trying different things. That's one of the things that, was a big lesson for me was, as much research, I'm a researcher, right? So I'll go research, figure out how to do something, and then I'll try to push it past the whatever they say you can do. And I'm like, I bet I could do that better. And I go and I try and make it better, right? And I go and try and do better. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the fact of the matter is you got to try things. If you don't try things, you're not going to discover what happens. A lot of people, they're on TikTok or whatever, and they're like, oh, none of my videos are doing anything, none of my blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, maybe you haven't quite figured out what your space is.
Yeah, but more
So,
than that, also the algorithms changed. So for ages it was
correct.
videos, so it was always my face to video, and then it was
Yeah.
slides. So I had this great
Yeah.
long period of just doing slides, and now I'm back to face videos again. I just don't talk so much on
Yeah.
mine, but
Right. Right. And it's maybe you haven't quite found your space, right? And what your people, the people who are supposed to read your books, the people who are going to love your books, right? Because frankly, not everybody's going to love your book, period, plain and simple, right? That was a hard lesson. It was like, I wrote my book for everybody to enjoy, except for not, right? Like,
you
it's
didn't
just
write
not
it
the
for me.
facts, right? It's like, it's not the facts, right? And
Exactly.
you're like, yeah,
I'm like, my
classic
book's not for
old
you.
school
It's fine.
fantasy is just not my jam. Like,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean?
There's
Like,
no
that's the
kissing. I
thing.
want kissing.
Right. Exactly.
And probably
And that's
vampires.
right. That's the thing. And your book isn't going to be for everybody. So you probably need to dial it in here
Yeah.
and figure out exactly who your books are for. And then test some things in those waters to find your space that's actually going to work. Right. And so one of the huge things for me was testing, just being willing to test and go for it. And again, I'm kind of one of those guys who just goes, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going all in. Let's try it. And that definitely has paid off. I'll say.
Okay, so I am actually going to ask you about the thing I'm supposed to be asking you about,
Oh,
which
what?
is reader magnets. So my question to you is, how do you actually promote it? How do you promote your reader magnet?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the really amazing things about TikTok and social media is that you are casting a net to a wider readership and new people, right? And so one of the things I really worked hard on for a long time was when people commented on my TikTok videos, and I got the sense that they would remotely be interested in reading, old school fantasy, especially on videos where I like held up like Dragonlance or something, and I was talking about Dragonlance, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, I love Dragonlance," blah blah blah. It was
I
like,
have no
oh,
idea what that is.
perfect, right, right. So it's an old school D&D like style book, right?
Okay.
All holding up these old school books that people love, right? And they would engage and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, I love that book." And my strategy on this was engage them by going, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Who's your favorite character?" That kind of thing. Then they would comment back. So this is like a few points of contact, right? They would comment back and with their favorite character or whatever, and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I totally agree. I love that character or whatever. um d he's so much like such and such character that I have in my story, and you can totally read the free stories from that. Find them in my bio. You can get these free stories about this new fantasy world that I've been creating." And people will be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Thank you so much." So I had multiple points of contact with them. And then I get to tell them after they're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." I get to go, "Dude, I hope you have so much fun. Let me know who your favorite character is, blah, blah, blah." And I'm just engaging people, right, in that conversation, but also leading them to something that they would like. So it's not like this weird, uh, I'm trying to manipulate you into doing something. It's no, you would actually probably like this. Like, come join me. It's going to be a fun adventure. Come with me on this. And people would do it and they would love it. And half of them wouldn't. I wouldn't say half. I guess more than half liked it and stayed. So, you get a percentage of them that won't like it and they'll leave. But just that kind of engagement would make them go and join the readers list. I've also done over the last year since all of that stuff and since the books have launched and that kind of stuff, I have done, like um, author swaps for newsletters and that kind of thing. That's a pretty popular thing. I've also done I've done a couple of those like giveaway ones where it was like, hey, we'll get a bunch of readers to sign up for this giveaway and you can get some new readers. You have to be careful with some of those because a lot of those are just like freebie seekers and they're just like, nah, I just want the free thing and I don't really care. And so if you pay for something like that, well, you're probably going to lose some money, right?
Yeah, I keep them in a separate kind of list so that it doesn't
Yes,
pollute my open rates because I
you
have
got it.
really high open rates. And
Right.
I'm like, I
Yeah.
do not like, and the open rates for the freebie seeker ones are so much
So
lower,
low.
so
Yeah.
low.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, I can't believe that we're running out of time. I've just realized what the time
Oh
is.
my goodness.
It's because I'm so good at tangential chat. But I wanted to ask, what are the kind of mistakes you see authors making with their reader magnets?
Not having one would be the first mistake. It sounds obvious, but you'd be so surprised at how many authors don't have a reader magnet. And it's like, it's really not that hard. There's so many ideas out there and so many different reader magnets. I mean, mine might happen to be 7 stories that's a lot. Sure, I get it. But I had the added bonus that now I can sell them in print, right? Just like you. And it doesn't have to be that big, right? Even small, short stories, something like that, can be an amazing reader magnet. And it does the job of setting the tone for the new reader, right? Because that's what you want to do. You want to set the tone. You're like, this is kind of what you're going to get if you go and buy my books. I want you to go and buy my books, but like I want you to know what you're going to get because if they know what they're going to get, they'll buy with confidence and they'll happily buy, right? But if you give them, for example, I've got a classic style epic fantasy adventure. If I gave them this grim, bloody horror story as my reader magnet, I'm not setting up good expectations for what they should expect in the books. So if they love the grim, bloody horror, they're probably going to be disappointed when they buy Stone and Sky, right? You got to set up the right expectations. That's a thing. That is another mistake that I see a lot of authors make is they're not giving the right things. They're giving it something that doesn't make any sense with what they're trying to sell, right? I know some people who have a few different series and they're different. They have different vibes, right? And so they have a reader magnet for each vibe, for each series, which I think is so smart because again, you're setting up the expectation for the readers. I know if you're not a fantasy author, think about like a mystery author. You could do like a case study, like or a for the murder, right? You got a murder that happens, and you put together a case study for the actual murder, and people love that stuff. Some people who are like super into like lore in their books you could write something like a ancient wizard scribblings and if your books are super heavy in lore the people who want lore filled books are going to love that kind of thing. You get what I'm saying? Like meet the vibe of what you're expecting, what readers should expect when they buy your books. I've seen people commission songs. That's happening a lot, actually. That's kind of a wave of the future thing. I'm seeing a lot of authors actually commissioning, composers and people to actually write and record songs for them. I see people write drinks. I have a friend who released a cozy fantasy called Bartender Between Worlds, and he put together all sorts of like cool cocktails and drinks, and he has drink recipes that he can use as
He
reader magnet,
he
which is so
smashed his
great.
Kickstarter as well. I was so proud of
Yeah,
him.
yeah, he did great. You know, Herman. Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
mean,
and I think
just
he's coming to
so
Vegas
awesome.
too, which is good.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to him about it the
Yeah,
other day. He was like, I think I'm gonna be
yay.
there.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, amazing. Um, I can't believe we're at the end of this, which I'm so sad because
much.
we could keep chatting for ages and I could actually probably ask you about the thing I was supposed to ask you about. But this is the Rebel Author Podcast. So tell me about a time you unleashed your inner rebel.
Yeah, I'd say there's at least two really obvious things that come to mind. Is one, quitting my job a year before my book came out. People thought I was a lunatic. People thought I was crazy, but I was like, no, I have to do this right. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. And then two, I actually had a lot of people telling me before my book came out, before Stone and Sky came out, people were telling me, you have to be on KU. You have to be on KU. There's no way you're not going to be able to get discovered. You're never going to sell any books, blah, blah, blah. People that don't go on KU never sell more than 100 books. Tons of them. Tons of people telling me this. And I was like, no, I don't care. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to do what I want to do. And and sure enough, I don't call people out, and I don't I'm positive guy. Like, it's all about the joy and fun over here. But, I look back and I'm like, I'm really glad I didn't listen to you, because boy, you could have led me down a really dark place.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And funnily enough, after several years of doing this podcast, the thing that I kind of know about rebellion is that most of the time it's joy seeking. We rebel because either we want to change something or we're miserable and we have to go and seek that joy. And that's one of the things that I really love about rebellion.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today. Would you like to tell everyone where they can find out more about you and your books?
Of course, sure. Yeah. So I know Z.S Diamanti is super hard to spell. So don't get too hung up on it. We'll put it in the show notes. But if you want to actually check out my reader magnets, it's a great thing. I've got a whole automated system where you can see it's an automated welcome system. So when you join the readers list, you actually can see what I do and what I send to people over the span of a few weeks. And so you can kind of glean ideas from that and run with it. But if you would like to, you can get 7 free fantasy stories. If you're about those old school fantasies, I'm sure you'll love it. You can get that at freefantasyfiction.com. Yeah, way easier to spell than Z.S Diamanti. So freefantasyfiction.com, and it's attached to my website, so you'll be able to find all my socials there, and you can connect up with me and just say hey.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And of course, a giant thank you to all of the show's listeners and all of the show's patrons. If you would like to get early access to all of the episodes, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. I'm Sasha Black. You are listening to Z.S Diamanti, and this was the Rebel Author Podcast. I'm joined by Sasha Wosley, and we're talking all about The Great Experiment, pivoting from trad pub to indie. So join me next week for that.
Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.